Thank you, members. It's 10 o'clock and welcome to the first meeting of the Scrutiny Committee in its municipal year. My name is Dan Essex. For those who don't know me, I'm the Governance and Scrutiny Manager here at the Combined Authority. And as this is the first meeting of the year, your first item of business is to elect a chair and then a vice chair for the year. Regulations that apply to all combined authorities across the country and our two scrutiny committees mean that the chair of any scrutiny committee can only come from a party that is a different party than the elected mayor. So for the purposes of this committee, only Conservative members are eligible to be either the chair or the vice chair. So you will hopefully have seen an email that went round when we asked for expressions of interest from those eligible councillors who wish to stand as either chair or vice chair. In respect of chair, we received one expression of interest, which was from Councillor Andrew Burrow. So with that expression of interest, can I ask if, I should say, although it can only be a Conservative councillor, all members of the committee are entitled to vote on the appointment of the chair. So do I have a councillor to formally nominate Councillor Burrow?
I will, if I may.
Thank you. Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other formal nominations for the position of chair? If not, then can I ask councillors if you can indicate if you're in favour of Councillor Burrow being your chair? Any against? None. So, Councillor Burrow, can I ask you to take over? Thank you.
Thank you for that. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the appointment of a vice chairman. I would like to nominate Vera Waters, if that is okay, Vera.
Thank you.
Do I have a seconder for that?
If I may.
Councillor Kedler, are there any other nominations? Those in favour? Thank you very much, everyone. Councillor. I think Councillor Waters and I share a common view, which is, and we picked this up off the previous Labour chair of this committee, which was, we do best if this is non-political. Yeah. We do best if what we can do is help the officers and the board and the mayor get the very best out of what they're trying to do. And we have a level of understanding of what the residents in our own boroughs require, which is probably even better than the leaders of our own councils have got, because they tend to get diverted onto very big issues, and sometimes it's hard then to remember who elected us in the first place. And that quality of input is sometimes very helpful to officers and to the board members. So that's really what I see my job as, to try and get everybody to agree what it is that we can do to actually make the policy implementation as good as possible. And I think it's worked quite well over the last 3 years, and we've actually had some influence on detail. Yeah. So apologies for absence.
January. Apologies have been received from Councillor David Minery from Shropshire Non-Constituent Authorities and Councillor Philip Bateman from City of Wolverhampton Council, who has sent Councillor Bloomfield as his substitute.
Welcome, Councillor Bloomfield. Thank you. Sorry, Brookfield, sorry. Thank you for coming, and welcome to all the new councillors who've joined this committee for the first time. You will find that the Combined Authority has got more letters than Heinz has in its alphabet soups. It does take a little while to get used to them, but the good thing about moving to the integrated settlement is there will be fewer of these, because we used to get either 100 odd grants from the government, each of which came with a long title, which got shortened down to its initials. And hopefully you'll get on board with all what these things mean quicker than I did, because it took me about 2.5 years before I understood what some of these were. So welcome everybody. Declarations of interest. Are there any pertaining to this agenda? Audit, thank you. Chairman's remarks. I think I only have one thing to make sure that everybody is aware. At the last board meeting, it was decided to do a review of the overview and scrutiny arrangements for the combined authority. That specifically appeared to me to be focusing on the arrangements for scrutinising the transport delivery side. And there was some view expressed that maybe that wasn't actually, that separate committee wasn't required. They have gone away, the officers have gone away and created a paper, which at some point in time will be delivered to the board, which I think is later this month, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. We will not get a chance to look at that. I did express concern about workload on this committee if it ended up as a single committee. No doubt officers will take that into consideration, but that is a potential thing that might change. But as the current arrangements stand, if it's got anything to do with walking, cycling, buses, rail, metro, anything to do with transport, it's not ours. Everything else is. That's our terms of reference, which are on 4 pages, but that's my view on how it is. So so we've got about half the budget, but it's split between a whole myriad of things. But they generally link into those things that the mayor talked about, which is jobs, housing. Oh, I'm forgetting them, whatever it is, job, housing. Growth, that's right, yeah. Anyway, so we've got all of those apart from the transport for everybody bit. So, so I think that's covered terms of reference as well as opening remarks, unless you have something.
Only to add to what you said, Chair, and in respect of the review of scrutiny, you're right, a paper is going to the next full board meeting, which is on 19th of July. Only to give yourself as Chair and the committee assurance that the paper that's going is setting out the scope of the review rather than the conclusions of the review, which obviously haven't yet been done. The scope, and that scope is to be agreed by board members. The scope includes consulting with the chair and members of this committee and of the Transport Scrutiny Committee as well. So there will be an opportunity for members to have their say. It's not intended to be a review that's done to them, but will include yourselves and other stakeholders as well. So the paper that's going, say, in July sets that out. Then the review will take place over the summer and early autumn, with the expectation possibly that the conclusions will be presented in September. So work that hasn't yet started, and you will be involved, and your input into that review will be welcomed.
Thank you for that. That hopefully the meeting is actually on the 18th.
18th, that's right.
Okay. And Councillor Waters will be attending that board meeting in my stead. I'm trying to get some social housing built in my ward, and I've been banging away on this for 3 years. I'm not going to give up at this meeting. So I'm pleased to say that Councillor Waters is free and will make any comments necessary on the terms of reference that Dan talked about. But in essence, it's pretty non-controversial at this stage. So minutes of the last meeting. For those who were there here, are you content with the minutes? I remember Councillor Kettle was there and Councillor Waters was there.
Yeah.
Councillor Lloyd, I think you were there on screen, weren't you?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Are we content? Yes, I have no objections, so we'll take those minutes as okay. So we now move on to the brownfield remediation study. A little bit of background for those who weren't here. We had a deep dive looking at brownfield sites and came up with some recommendations. The officers, after some negotiation, agreed the recommendations. And this is an update on where we are with those. So if I could hand over.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So as you've alluded to, we're making 3 recommendations, which is firstly to review the progress to date in response to the committee's recommendations on the brownfield land remediation process. Secondly, to endorse the steps taken to simplify and enhance the grant process, improving data accessibility and support sustainable development outcomes.
Speak into your mic, will you please? We can't hear you.
Sorry, Councillor. And to agree ongoing dialogue and monitoring of progress through quarterly updates to ensure continued transparency and accountability. So further to those 3 recommendations, as you've set out, Chair, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee published its final report into the Combined Authority's brownfield land remediation process. That was back in February 2025. And you'll have seen in the pack that we've included a number of items as to how we've looked at those recommendations and addressed them. And I thought it might be useful if I just go through each one step by step. So consideration 1 was the task and finish group had heard evidence that the Combined Authority's brownfield reclamation application process was resource heavy and unnecessarily complex, particularly for those who successfully delivered projects before. There were a number of recommendations, and so on the back of that, what the team has subsequently done is revised an expression of interest form and full application form. That was launched back in April 25, and that was appended to the agenda for today. The form has been socialised with developers for feedback. Primarily, the form has been redesigned to inform the applicant now of authority's requirement to process the grant application. The way that it's set out now means that there's early citing of key information needed for the heads of terms and the grant agreement. In theory, it should help us support the Combined Authority decision-making process on most up-to-date development, appraisal and market information from said applicants. Fourthly, to minimise bottlenecks towards the late stages of projects. And 5, speed up the review of the application process more generally. I don't know whether there are any comments, Chair, on that particular point, or whether you'd like me to go through all points and then
Go through all points.
Okay, yeah, sure. Point 2, this was around the task and finish group recognising that the responsibility for brownfield land registers is that of the constituent authorities. However, the task and finish group had heard evidence that the format for those registers varied across the 7 constituent authorities. This did not make it as simple for developers to access information on brownfield sites. And my colleague Rob Lamont will talk to some of this in a moment, Chair, but the point is that the Combined Authority are working very closely both with local authorities on a monthly basis, certainly constituent members, and then alongside the SPP or Strategic Place Partnership, we're focusing those meetings alongside those in England to better understand what those pipelines look like and how they involve or relate to brownfield sites. Point 3 was the task and finish group had heard evidence that the biodiversity of some brownfield sites can significantly exceed that of agricultural lands. Members were concerned that biodiversity offsetting on the Combined Authority grant-aided projects could be delivered hundreds of miles away under the Environment Act terms. So we have considered this, Chair. At the moment, our consideration on this point is that this is still best worked out by the local authority and the local respective planning authority, rather than adding further burden to Combined Authority's process around assessing applications. Point 4 was the task and finish group had heard evidence that cash flow issues could act as a barrier to bringing brownfield sites forward for housing, where land decontamination or remediation costs are particularly high for small developers. So we've indeed looked at this, and what we're trying to do through that application form and the information that we're asking from applicants is to strike a balance here very much between making sure that money that does go to developers is done so with commensurate security provisions or protections for the combined authority. That robust due diligence is now in place to identify those needs. Grant drawdown is considered, though, on a project-by-project basis to ensure sustainable delivery. And then the last point, which was point 5, which is the task and finish, but recognise that some ad hoc flexibility had been applied in the past, and that there was a risk of paying for land reclamation before substantial start had been made in actual house building. And so this has been addressed by colleagues within the team, whereby appropriate mitigation strategies are now in place to ensure that where there is a site coming forward for development, key milestones are understood as to what the remediation looks like in relation to starts and site from a housing perspective, and that there's no gap or to mitigate it where possible. Those are my final comments, Chair.
Thank you. For those who were around last year and understand deeply what this is about, this is probably fairly easy. For other people, what we were just trying to do is make the process easier, because there were some indications, particularly for smaller developers, that the process was difficult. We just wanted to make it as easy as possible. At a personal level, I have no idea whether the new process is better than the old process. A 2-step process sounds sensible. Unless anybody else has got any comments, I have one. Is it you, Councillor Scott?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just one comment on the simplification of the grant process. Talk about the piloting of it. I just wonder if there's any sort of further feedback you can give us on how that went and what the feedback was from those developers.
Yes, thanks, Councillor. So, as I understand, this was shared with a number of developers that we'd looked at applications on or with previously. As per the Chair's suggestion, the new application form has also been shared with a contact at Lovells, who was a key instigator in, and also was interviewed as part of this initial process, and so we're awaiting his feedback. Thank you.
Building on Councillor Scott's comment, can we actually put a review in after, I don't know, a year or something, to actually go back to some of the people who've gone through the process just to ask them how they found it? I think that would actually help.
Yeah, I think that'd be immensely helpful, Chair. And I think it's important, certainly for me to put across today, that this isn't just fixed in time now when we won't look to improve the process. I think this is an ongoing, continuous improvement process that we're looking at. So that's an important part of doing that, is getting those applicants to feedback.
That would be great. I mean, my impression is that this is now significantly speeded up. We're getting far more completions now, far more houses approved, completions are finishing. The process is beginning to get a life of its own, shall I say, rather than having to be pushed. I got that right?
Yes, you have, Chair. I mean, if I may add a personal note here, I mean, my background before coming to the Combined Authority was secured lending on residential projects. So that's fundamentally providing either senior or mezzanine debt into the funding of residential projects. So looking at it from a sort of very much a private sector commercial space. Before coming to the Combined Authority, I was used to a fairly sort of slick operation, if you will, in terms of processing applications with heads of terms going out within the first 48 hours of receiving an application. So what I was met with when I arrived at the Combined Authority was something that did seem particularly long-winded and perhaps quite onerous, and goes to the point that you made, which for some of those large developers, they'll be quite well set up to address application forms that are quite so well long-winded. But for the smaller applicants, there was a risk of us prejudicing them. So I believe that the new application form split into both Part A and Part B allow for much quicker review. They are perhaps not onerous, but they do ask for a fair amount of detail, but that's only fair in making sure that actually we can properly assess applications earlier on. But what we can do is ensure that we're going back to applicants in a prompt manner to inform them that we can or we can't process that information. But what we've also done on this application form, which marks an enormous leap, is Part B, which is closely aligned with the format of the project case that we looked completely clearly to get that through our programme assurance and appraisal process. And that for me is a bit of a no-brainer insofar as if you've got all the information to hand there that almost writes that report, then in theory you should be able to get that through really quickly. So what we had previously was stop, start through a process. If you need to do this form and then that form and we need to go back and ask more, we've really tried to do is just think about what is the ultimate goal, how do we get there, and make sure we ask for that at the start.
Thank you, Councillor Walton.
Thank you, Chair. Now, there was one thing that we actually spoke of, and that was we looked at the targets of different authorities, the way that how much of the funding they've actually had. And it was actually Councillor Kettle over there that actually pointed out that Walsall is one of the lowest ones for the funding. So what I've done, and anyone else in the room should actually do this as well if they feel that their council isn't actually getting the funding that they need. I've actually taken it back to our head of planning and asked him to look into it with the main builders and so forth, ask why they're not applying for funding for brownfield, because it is available, but they're not actually, it's not as high what it should be in Walsall. So we've actually, it'd be an idea for all the members, if they feel that there's brownfield sites in your area and they're not being they could be built on, they're not, instead of using Greenbelt, it's a good idea to actually speak to Yeda Planning. Thank you.
Well, no, noted, and thanks, Councillor. I think certainly myself and colleagues, other development managers, like I said, we meet with local authorities on a monthly basis. So what we're trying to really do there is fundamentally understand what the pipeline looks like. You may well appreciate that for some of those really big sort of town regen schemes, the ones that are still very high level in terms of a planning perspective, it's quite difficult for us to actually sort of fundamentally say yes or no that we can't do those. But what we do try and do is step through all of those processes with local authorities on that monthly basis to understand how those plans are coming forward. At the moment, the way that the funds are set up, we do need to be able to act quickly. We need to have confidence that we can contract quite quickly on them. So at the moment, it's a bit of an ongoing process, but certainly what we've done is try to really tighten up what that pipeline looks like. You may be familiar with a parallel group that meets, the task and finish group, which again, my colleague Rob might be able to speak to, but that fundamentally looks at the pipeline across all of the constituent and non-constituent members to understand what's coming down the track effectively, to understand what resources might be required for that. That's also, as I understand it, the forum for understanding those projects and how to perhaps inform the command authority on where to best prioritise.
Councillor Kettle.
Mr. Chairman, thinking about these two forms, these two-tier forms that we've just been talking about, I'm beginning to wonder to enable us to speed it up. Could we not make these forms time sensitive in that, we guarantee a reply within 30 days or 42 days or whatever it is, so that we know that once an application comes in, it is dealt with in, say, 2 months, 10 weeks or whatever we decide on. Should we not make these forms and to the applicant say, we need a reply back so they can give you a reply within X, Y, Z. And then we've got a time frame from when the application went in to when it was settled or agreed. I begin to wonder if we shouldn't apply a time sensitive. You understand where I'm coming from?
I think it's a really good point, Councillor. I mean, my sense on this is that I'd rather not put a time limit on it. The reason I say that is because fundamentally what we're trying to do through our application form is saying we won't consider it until you put all the information in there. And we believe all of the boxes, all of the requirements in there actually allow us to come to a reasoned decision. So we can go back straight away. But until that form is completed, we don't really consider it. It's not something that we're actually saying this is something that's within our pipeline that we're actually looking at. So the emphasis there, and that's why we've designed that form, is to very much say, as a previous practice, as I understand it, was to take applications at all sorts of different stages, which really probably was unfair. What we're trying now to do very much is say, if you provide us with all the information that's in that form, we will look at that and return to you promptly.
Surely the return to us promptly should be within 30 days.
I think at the moment, Councillor, I'd be concerned about setting an arbitrary timeline on it because there may still be qualifications that come forward from an applicant. We will certainly consider it at that point in time. But if there's any further changes after that 30 days, not quite sure how we'd readdress that, whether that's just an addendum to the actual form or ask them to complete the form again with refreshed information. Certainly at the moment, my experience of this is that that form, if you will, pushes applicants to make sure that all the information is in there so that we can review it. But at the moment, I don't see that there's any further requirement to add a time limit to it for processing internally.
But in the main, the applicants are going to be authorities, aren't they? Full-time employees of the authorities.
No, that's not always the case, councillor. So we do receive a lot of applications from private developers, housing associations. It's not just local authorities. So again, it's not wanting to prejudice the applicant, but for some of those, say, smaller and medium-sized developers, as you'll appreciate, they have a lot going on. They don't always have the dedicated resources to be able to respond in a timely manner to things. So again, I'd be quite keen for once all the information is provided, that we give any particular applicant not specifically 30 days, but a reasonable period within which to consider the application with us. But again, I'd be reluctant to put a time frame on it.
Mr. Chairman, if this two-tier system goes in place or goes in place, could we have a feedback as to how good and how quickly the outcome is actually turning out to be?
I think we have a review on housing data in September. Is that right?
That certainly sounds right, Chair.
Yes,
Because my colleague Saran Sankagiri, who looks after the programme.
so we can pick this up then in terms of how quickly are we turning these things around?
He'll be able to provide information across the programme in terms of all sorts of different metrics, and that may well be sort of earmarked in commercial directors or their tenants.
So if we could just make sure that your colleague is briefed that we would like some data on how long it's taking us to turn around completed. The trouble is, I know the first form is very simple, and anybody who can't fill that in with all the data shouldn't be bothering to start it, I would suggest. The second one is a lot more comprehensive, but that in essence is the contract that we will sign with them. We'll give you this, but you've got to do that. It is very legalistic input, isn't it? So it's got to be right.
Yes, I mean, I think the way that the form is now split, like I say, is that part A is very much about trying to get all of that raw information that we need to be able to assess, do we think this fits within the criteria of devolved funding? And if we believe that all of the information, once we reviewed it, does meet that mark, then it's a yes, please now complete part 2 or part B, if you will. And that's very much, as I said, that's aligned with the project cases that we then write for the internal team programme assurance and appraisal for them to review.
Councillor Waters.
Thank you. It isn't the council that actually normally puts their bids in. It is actually usually the builders. And speaking from personal experience, what a lot of builders actually do is actually come to planning and put a planning proposal in. We want to build 150 houses here, and then if it actually goes through the idea of it, then they will actually apply for funding. They don't always have funding when they actually come to planning, or when that's the way it works. So at the end of the day, this process cannot be speeded up because they cannot put a planning application in if it's going to, if the planners say no, or if the committee says no, it's not going to work. They need to be sure that when they put them down to put these 150 houses in, that they've got the go ahead to actually do it, and that's when they get the funding. So there can't really be any constraints on timescales.
But I think it's a really good point again, Councillor, that when we look at an application, what we're always trying to do is mitigate some of those perhaps perceived delays in the planning teams regionally. But what we don't want to do is not entertain an application which we think might also be very, worthy of merit in terms of looking at the grant funding. So it's one that we try and bridge on a sort of a case by case basis. But you're absolutely right, for a lot of developers, they probably won't even consider coming to us if they don't think that they're going to get planning.
Are there any other comments? So if we could just record that we've noted it and the request that there is some metrics on the number of applications and the rate at which they are approved in the September review. Thank you very much. So we're now moving on to the local Get Britain working plans update. There.
Thank you, Chair. I've put some slides together just to take us through the paper, makes it a little bit easier to digest, because I appreciate this will be the first time some of members will be hearing about the Get Britain working plan. Jenna, are you able to put them up for me, please? Just a little bit of background. I'm Mubashir Daz. I'm the head of health and communities at West Midlands Combined Authority, and I work in the Employment, Skills, Health and Communities Directorate. The Get Britain working plans are a national requirement that each local area has to develop. They're seen as a join up of our work, health and skills system, hence why I'm leading on this. Just to recap, next slide, please, of what is the actual requirement. So the reason why we're looking into this is it's linked to the government's growth mission. The idea is to reduce the pressures within our labour market, and specifically linked quite a bit in the West Midlands region to economic inactivity due to ill health. The focus areas for the Get Britain working plans are to look into analysing that labour market and joining up the current delivery within the system in response to those pressures, and to develop a plan which is bought into by all stakeholders across public services, across voluntary services. And to think about a long-term approach to sustainability, as well as thinking about the governance that will look after this plan, which is meant to be for 10 years. The key metrics government has identified for us to look into are about the employment rate. They want to hit an 80% employment target by 2035. They're looking at the gross disposable household income, so family income, looking at economic inactivity, as I mentioned, specifically due to ill health, the employment gap due to disability, thinking about youth employment outcomes, as well as progression within work. It is meant to be a completely developed in partnership plan, which we have done so far, and we received some small amount of funding to be able to develop these plans. Next slide, please. We've begun to map out the employment support landscape within the West Midlands region. This is something done in conjunction with various stakeholders. We held a stakeholder event on the 15th of May, which had over 80 people from multiple organizations, including local authorities, including the JCP, including voluntary sector and private sector, including employers, and this was discussed at that meeting. We also discussed our current performance, if you would like to say, in terms of the key metrics that DWP want to look into. Next slide, please. And you can see that employment rate at the moment is well below the 80% target. So there's a lot of work to be done in that space. The paper that you have at the moment is giving you an update of where we are with these plans to date. We haven't finalized the local plans yet, but these are all of the considerations which I'm sharing with you that are going into developing those plans. Next slide, please. The event that I mentioned had some really key takeaways for us to develop. The stakeholders wanted an ambitious target. So the 80% was seen as quite ambitious. We were asked to look into the foundations to be making sure that those are strong in order for us to be able to build for the next 10 years. Thinking more about expansion of devolution, but with a focus on delivering better flexibility for local areas to be able to utilize some of the funding that gets devolved. Thinking about working from a system point of view rather than within silos. Focusing quite a bit on inclusive labor market, and then simplifying the user experience for some of the programs that are offered. Next slide, please. They also set out some priority actions. You will not be able to read this, but it's just to give you an idea of what came from that engagement with stakeholders. These are not going to be our actions going forward, but this is a great sense of what the wider stakeholders feel we should focus on, and the final plans will definitely resemble something like this. But you can see how they've laid it out in terms of what we should focus on in the first 6 months of the plan, the first 12 to 24 months, and then the longer term over the 10 years. Next slide. We've since made sure that we engaged with even wider partners, thinking about the regional DWP leadership, making sure the Job Centre Plus were on board. We've worked with the directors of public health. We've made sure we've spoken to the Mayor's Jobs Task Force. We've held a roundtable with businesses and employers. We've held several roundtables with VCFSC organizations, as well as service user groups, to make sure everybody was aware of the plans, of what we're trying to focus on, what their ideas are about what needs to be within the longer term plans, and to make sure when the plans do come out, there are no surprises. I'm not going to go into what they've come out with, but it is in the paper, as we've shared with you. Next slide, please. We've submitted to DWP our short template, so just to let them know where we've gotten to with our plans. But the final plan is going to be circulated to local authority leadership at the end of, in August, for them to start reviewing it, and we will get it approved at this WMCA board on the 22nd of September. Next slide, please. And that is our timeline. There we go. That's our timeline to get to that stage. As you can see, we've gone through lots and lots of various engagement slots, including this, to make sure everyone has an opportunity to feed into these plans. The board approval will be sought on the 22nd of September, with a final submission of the full plan to DWP by the end of September deadline that's been set. I will stop there, Chair.
Thank you. Members, Councillor Scott, I think you were first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a quick one on the target. I imagine that a lot of members of the committee are going to be interested in that 80% target. It does feel, as you've sort of said yourself, very, very ambitious, considering sort of employment in the West Midlands has been pretty stagnant since sort of before COVID and continuously since, but also the employment rate was 68.2 in March 2005. So there is, 20 years ago, we haven't seen lots and lots of growth. So I just wonder what sort of learning there's been from lots of the other sort of previous employment schemes the CA has done over the sort of past 8-9 years. There's been quite a lot of them. I just wonder whether there's any sort of learning from that and how we're going to really strive for that sort of 80% target. And then just secondly is around the employers and the sectors that we're sort of targeting. It'd be helpful just to know sort of what those sort of key sectors are and key employers that you're working with. And I suppose just going back to the target, if the target's by 2035, is does the combined authority, is there going to be a target year by year for what our goal is to sort of continue to sort of track that and the effectiveness of the plan as well?
3 questions there. Then. No, I was just saying that so that I can answer them appropriately. Your first question in terms of the targets being ambitious, absolutely, 80% national target is quite ambitious. We're being realistic, given the scale of unemployment in this region and in Birmingham. We know that making an improvement of about 74.5% would lead us to contribute to the national number to be able to reach 80%.
Yeah.
So we are being realistic because we absolutely recognize the past 20 years the number has moved very little. So while the targets set for the national number are 80%, we in the region are going to set it to just below 75% within our plans, just so that we are able to reach the 80% nationally. Because that contribution in numbers from this region will lead us to that target nationally. So that was a very good question. And then the second question was about what we've learned so far from current employment support provision. I think what I would say is we were probably one of the 2 regions that were seen as centers of excellence in doing individual placement and support. So us alongside Sheffield, South Yorkshire for the health-led trials of IPS. I think we've been, that was nationally evaluated. We were then able to extend our Thrive Into Work program for that very reason. And the reason why I'm highlighting that program is because the biggest issue for our region in numbers has been the number of people going economically inactive due to ill health. And this program and this kind of dedicated support through the IPS principles has led to really great job outcomes for that very difficult cohort who are either on long-term health conditions, serious mental illness, or even lower levels of mental ill health. We've seen that number grow in young people. So we've catered some of our more recent support to think about young people and making sure that we're supporting them while they're in college. So Thrive at College is a program that supports them to be able to better prepared for the job market. And we've also worked with local authorities in highlighting some of their really great successes. So in Coventry, the Job Shop, in Wolverhampton, the Wolves at Work initiative. And we're taking the best elements of that and that learning and putting it into these plans to take forward. The government recognizes that we've done that really well. So the Connect to Work, which has been rolled out nationally, is based on the Thrive Into Work program. So I think there are some really great stories of success from this region that we are taking forward, but we're not kind of resting on our laurels in a sense. We are going to be working to making sure that these plans are reflective of the successes and learning from the barriers. Leads me to your third question about how we're going to monitor this. I think the governance structure that we're setting up is for an iterative process of these plans. These are not going to be plans set and done. They're going to be revisited every year to make sure that we are both reaching the numbers and that those numbers remain realistic and those programs remain realistic and relevant. So the governance that we're going to set up and that's one of the first things in the first 6 months that we need to do is set up a governance structure which is not duplicative. So it needs to kind of build on what we have already. So Scrutiny is going to be part of it. CA Board is going to be part of it. But whatever, in the sense that we are trying to achieve from a reform perspective as well, from public service reform, how do these sit across that piece and making sure we're not kind of developing new governance processes just to appease us. So that first 6 months is about outlining that and making sure that everybody's on board with that.
Councillor Waters, was there anyone else? Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know whether I haven't heard you mention apprenticeships. Now, as far as I can see, if someone wants to upskill, they should be able to take part in some apprenticeships, because this is my biggie. This is not everyone can sit in a classroom and learn. You give them the hands-on experience and they can fly, they can get on with the job and do what they're going to do. And a lot of the time it's expected, oh, you've got to pass this qualification, you've got to sit and do this in the classroom for the hours, and they won't be able to do that. Whereas if you give them the hands-on, they can actually do it. And apprenticeship should actually be for any age to actually upskill. Thank you.
I couldn't agree more. So I haven't highlighted all of the things that we are going to include in the plan. Certainly, I focused quite a bit on the employment support side of it, but like I said, this is meant to be a join up of work, health, and skills. And within our skills and within our employment and skills strategy at the Combined Authority, apprenticeships are very high on that list. And we are trying very hard to make sure businesses utilize their apprenticeship levy in this region. And we are working with government to devolve even further the responsibilities we have on apprenticeships, so we can actually regionally shape them and be able to include them in our plans going forward. But apprenticeships definitely, and more so, degree apprenticeships are going to be a big part of our plans.
Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Chair. Not long ago, we had the West Midlands Combined Authority Job Rotation Scheme come through scrutiny. Just wondering if any aspects of that could be picked up and passed around to other friends in the region, because, and I'm going to promote Coventry again, sorry, Chair, and everything in Coventry Job Shop and that scheme that I've been out and seen, it's absolutely phenomenal. So I wouldn't want to lose the focus from that, because we're getting kids off the streets into jobs fully trained at a much lower cost than what's costing us nationally at present. So I'm hoping that that's going to be something part of this going forward.
I'll second that endorsement for Coventry, Chair, because I think they're doing some fantastic pieces of work there. So the plans that I've suggested are going to not only be new things that we're going to be doing, they're going to be a culmination of what we're doing best in the region. So the work that we're doing on Connect to Work, the work that we're doing on the Youth Trailblazer, the Youth Guarantee, that will absolutely be part of what we're going to support going forward. And within, as you will know, within the Youth Trailblazer, we've extended the job rotation pilot. And our plans are hopefully that if we can get more money for the Youth Guarantee from government, then we're going to be scaling that across the region as well. So absolutely, that is well within the part of the plans.
For those of you that maybe not read the work programme, because there was a lot of in September, we're going through the numbers on that, on how successful really was it, how many people actually started, how many people are in real jobs as a result, and how many people have maybe not stayed in the jobs. I mean, it's the how solid, because it looked extremely effective, but that was at an early stage. So and my view is, if we can support the officers on this, if it works, then that would help us get some more money from government, because effectively that's what we're trying to do, isn't it?
Always.
Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chair. You said it's being extended. Where is it being extended to? Is it just going to remain in Coventry, or is it going to be pilots going to be done in other areas of the West Midlands? Thank you.
So extended within our asks at the moment. I think the Youth Trailblazer, the Youth Guarantee is going through approvals at the moment. So I shouldn't state specifically that it has been extended or where it has been extended to, but it is within those proposals that the Youth Guarantee, the money that we received for this year, includes a continuation of the job rotation pilot. And in the expected extension of the Youth Trailblazer over the next 3 years, which we haven't received confirmation from government, but there's strong whispers that that is happening. We will definitely be looking to scale the rotation pilot across West Midlands.
Brilliant.
For new members, what that scheme, it's copying a Scandinavian scheme whereby an existing employee and a private sector employer basically, is taken off the job. Their skills are enhanced by their employer, funded by the combined authority, and their job is filled on a temporary basis by somebody off, I'm going to call it the unemployment register. I don't know what the technically correct term is, but if you understand that, they are then trained in that job. And the purpose is that the person who's gone for higher skills ends up doing a bigger job, and the person who was unemployed ends up in a permanent job. And those were the numbers that we need to see. And it is relatively small numbers. I remember 60 to 80 or something like that, but it's highly focused about getting specific individuals upskilled and other individuals into work. And there's lots of wraparound support to help that happen. So if this works in Coventry, it could actually be a model for the rest of the West Midlands. That's the thought process.
Absolutely.
I have one thing that I keep banging. I noticed level 3 qualifications. I have a thing about level 2 qualifications. For those of you who don't know me, I used to be a human resource director. I got made redundant. I didn't want to fire any more people. I'd spent the last 2 years firing, so I became a plumber. Level 2 qualification, 8 weeks, bang, and I became a plumber, and I set up as a self-employed plumber. This region is screaming out for building trades. Yeah. We want to build 1.5 million houses across the country. We also got other things going on like refurbishment and retrofit of insulation and that kind of stuff. All of that stuff, most of that stuff is level 2. I would like to see within a strategy somewhere something other than we're doing level 3. Level 3 is extremely important, but I'm sorry, a level 3 in Latin, which is an A level in Latin, is only useful if you think the Romans were invading.
Even they don't speak it.
And to me, something that's highly specific, so we actually know what the employers need, and we are tailoring our training exactly to that, is what I would like to see. I know the government likes level 3. In the West Midlands, we are desperate short of level 2 skill to do the work we know needs doing in the West Midlands. Now, at the end of the day, construction and building work is not for everybody. But if you can go from HR director to plumber, I suspect it's actually wider than most people would expect. And yeah, my personal experience would actually say that this is really worthwhile looking at, but we need to dig into the weeds, because there's lots of things we train people for. We don't actually have huge employment potential.
I know there's not a question in there, but I will say that the employment and skills strategy that we have at the moment, one of the pillars of that is to provide a good education to level 2. Level 2 is specifically mentioned, and it is a focus area for us. And I think one of our growth areas is the construction sector, and it's recognized nationally as well, as we've received additional funding for that specifically.
That's great. I'll make the comment because it refers in your paper to level 3.
Sure.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. It's very interesting. I'm just taking off the chairs and employment skills. Currently, we are actually have noticed that government have changed for the curry ships, which is our West Midlands more hospitality coming into the country, because this is the area where we need to upskill somebody locally and nationally. They said if somebody were being outside the country or the European Union, their salary should be £45,000. And no single hospitality sector can afford that for curry chef for £45,000 to bring somebody from the outside the country. And how we can put this in place in our plans, where we can implement to upskill somebody at level 2 or level 3, so they can we produce our own curry chefs in the West Midlands. Thank you.
I think that's a very helpful piece of additional detail. It's not just construction, it is actually hospitality and entertainment are growing sectors.
And the care sector.
And the care sector, there's a number of these, and I think we need all of that lot built in to a strategy and identification of the needs. And I certainly would want my food when I go out to eat cooked by a level 3 person rather than a level 1 person. Thank you for that. Any other comments on the paper? I mean, personally, I found it very interesting. Thank you very much. Can we circulate to the members who are new to the committee? There was a really good piece of work on, it was an economic overview of the West Midlands. Sorry, I can't remember his name. I'm going to
Bit of the region report.
see.
Speech and like-
Yes, there's some really good stats in that. And if we could circulate, just email it out to people, it is really, it compares output per head, wages per head, family disposable income. It's all full of really interesting stuff and will give you in your boroughs a really good idea of where you sit economically. It's kind of background reading, but it's really quite helpful. And we only had it, was it a month ago, 2 months, wherever it was, yeah. So if we could circulate that, you don't have to read it, but I suspect you might find it helpful. Thank you. So we'll just note and support
Thank you,
the
Chair.
draft plan for getting West Midlands people working. Yes, that's what it is. Thank you. We have the Futures Green Paper.
Thank you very much, Chair. Hello again. My name is Jonathan Gibson, so I'm the Head of Policy and Integration here at Combined Authority, and we'll be taking you through an item about the West Midlands Futures Green Paper, which you will be able to see some slides on your screen about and which are included in your pack. So for those who weren't here at the agenda setting briefing, we defined that one of the items that it would be good to bring back to the committee is an update on how the region is developing its overall strategy. So you've heard a lot today about how we are investing in brownfield homes. You've heard from my colleague about how we're helping people into work. What West Midlands Futures tries to do is to bring it all together in setting out the overall direction for where the West Midlands is heading over the next 10 years. So West Midlands Futures has it's been a long time in the making. It is a bit intangible, so you might have to bear with us as we discuss things at that level, but hopefully you will see as we go through the presentation its kind of relevance and how it will start to shape more practical things on the ground. So we'll go through a short presentation and then there is the detailed green paper itself. We'll get onto what that is in your agenda packs, and apologies because the volume of papers that you mentioned earlier, Chair, is largely driven by this one item, but we thought it's important that you have the details should you wish to get into it. So John, if you could go into the first slide, please. So what we'll sketch out today is what West Midlands Futures is and what we mean by the West Midlands Futures Green Paper. We'll then give you a very brief overview of what's in it at a very high level. And as we'll get on to, the Green Paper was subject to an external consultation that has now closed, but we'll give you a sense of what's happening next on the back of this piece of work. If you could go to the next slide, please, John, thanks very much. So there are quite a lot of small words on the screen. You don't have to read them. The premise of West Midlands Futures is the West Midlands economy is not where it could or should be present. We've heard before, as was previously mentioned, that against a number of indicators, the output that we are achieving economically is not where it could or where it should be. What we are also seeking to understand through this is it has been possible in other parts of the world to achieve economic transformation at the scale of an economy that the West Midlands is. We have been, for the last 18 months, researching what our challenges are and what our strengths are, but also trying to learn from what other regions across the world have done to improve their economies. And West Midlands Futures attempts to bring that together and to sketch out what does the future look like and what do we need to do to realise a better future over the next 10 or so years. You'll have heard the Mayor talk a lot about a growth plan and his kind of vision for growing the economy, and we're trying to take that ambition forward through this piece of work. So what we have been doing is developing a green paper, which is essentially a consultation document that we have kind of used to deposit our ideas and all the research we've gathered so far, and all the conversations with local authorities, external partners we've had. We've put that all into one document, and we've then used that to seek external stakeholders' views on what do you think about the direction of travel that we're setting out here. We have been really pleased by the response we've had from external organisations to the green paper and some of the ideas set out within it. We've had nearly 150 responses. That's nearly around 2,000 to 3,000 kind of individual answers to around 20 questions. The kind of long and short of that is people are really keen and engaged to understand and get involved in where we're heading next. So the green paper has received a kind of positive level of engagement and a broad endorsement to some of the things that it sets out. If you go to the next slide, please, Janet. So to go into the economic aspects of that in a little bit more detail, whilst I think if you looked at our productivity compared to some other regions and our output compared to some other regions, you might kind of think, and even look at the external headlines around us, you might think that there are kind of reasons to be slightly gloomy there. But what we're trying to set out in the green paper at the very, very start of it is that the West Midlands actually has some very, very strong and distinctive economic foundations that are worth shouting about. The sheer size of the region at £77 billion, the size of our economy is almost double the size of Oxford's and Cambridge's combined, and is bigger than a number of developed countries in and of their own right. In terms of the people of the West Midlands, we obviously have the second largest population of any other city region of the UK, and it's growing, it's more diverse, and it's younger than any other bar one city region of the UK as well. The private sector is showing a lot of confidence in the future. Birmingham, until 2 weeks ago, was the top city outside of London for foreign direct investment. The West Midlands still is the top region for jobs created, but we have been knocked off the top of the table there in terms of Birmingham. But still, it shows that the private sector is really getting behind the West Midlands, and that applies if you look at some of the innovation strength as well. And we're obviously very well connected, more so than other regions to other parts. So what we think it's important to foreground the green paper in is a sense that we know there are real challenges here, but there are some reasons to be optimistic, and there are some really strong assets there in which we're trying to build a future strategy for the region. If you go to the next slide, please, Charlie. And so what are we trying to do also is to respond to a number of the big changes that are coming down the tracks from particularly government. Firstly, the invitation to develop a West Midlands growth plan. You'll remember last year the Prime Minister asked all mayors to develop a growth plan for their regions. That is one of the things that is going to come out of the green paper. We're also developing a spatial development strategy for the region. In the green paper, we are starting to ask some very early questions about how that strategy will be developed. We're also undertaking work, as Mubashir has introduced, on what is called public sector innovation, i.e. how can the public services across the region work better to achieve better outcomes for some of the most vulnerable of our residents. And we're also in the process of developing the next 5-year plan for net zero in the region. So the green paper is trying to ask all of those questions in the round, and we're starting to get feedback on what do you think, how would you think we should approach some of these big developments on the horizon. These are not specific projects, they're not specific programs, they are more about the overall direction and strategy that the region has across growth, how and where we are building, how we're reforming public services in partnership with local authorities, and where we're going next on net zero. So it is a bit of a kind of, you know, a Christmas tree document, if you like. There are so many different angles to it, but we thought, you know, if we're going to ask stakeholders some questions, let's try and bunch them together so people can offer views on them all at the same time. You got the next slide, please, John. Thank you. The bit that I want to focus on today is the West Midlands growth plan. So this is the thing that will come from the green paper the soonest. We hope to be able to publish the growth plan on the 21st of July. So that is but 2 weeks away. There is a team of people who are frantically trying to interpret the consultation feedback, develop the growth plan, consult kind of with local authorities, get the drafting right, and we would be very happy to bring this back to the committee next time. But what we'll set out here is that we are already pretty confident about the types of things that will feature in the growth plan, and these are set out on screen. So at the centre of the growth plan, there is a vision for what we think we want the future of the economy to look like. The central piece of that is ultimately higher living standards for residents across the region. That's the kind of main success metric. That's how we know we'll be successful or not. And we think in order to do that, we need to bring more people into work. So you've just heard from Mubashir about the fact if we could achieve something like 75% employment, that would be nearly 100,000 more people into work. We think that is a really important component of how you do that. But we also need to increase the productivity of work. If you look at how much output is created per job in the West Midlands, it's something like £35 per hour compared to something like £40 per hour for the UK average as well. So what is coming out of the work that people do is less than we see in other regions, and we think we can achieve improvements through to that metric alone. All of that while trying to support our continued progress towards net zero. So they are the kind of the big central parts of what do we think we want to achieve in future. And then on screen and in your slide packs, we think there are basically 6 things that need to happen in order to achieve that. The first is that we need to grow what we have called in the document our high growth cluster strengths. So these are the parts of the economy that are quite small in terms of the number of people they employ, but they are where our most productive businesses are. They are where we are able to do something distinctive and different to other parts of the region. And they are, if you were to break them down, advanced engineering, clean tech, health and medical tech, digital, and modern professional financial services. So these are the parts of the economy where the West Midlands do something distinctive and very well. We need to grow them. They're where the jobs of the future will be. And that's an important part of the growth plan next to that. The second element is how we support business leaders to be the best possible business leaders they can be. We know that the West Midlands has got some great entrepreneurs. We want to work out how we can support them to go further. That is not just about supporting one sector or another sector. It's more about how we are improving the quality of business management and leadership across the whole economy. And that's an important part of the growth sector too. And we think that if we do that, we'll help to get more investment into plant and machinery, into businesses as well. The third element is about our places. So if you think about transport, if you think about housing, we know that in the next 20 or so years, Birmingham is going to see more pressure on its transport network than any other major city in the UK. And we also know that because of how we are structured with 3 cities and 4 distinctive boroughs, we need to be better connecting them across the region. So we're trying to say that is a particular area where we need to focus future transport investment, as well as we heard earlier, continuing to build more homes, because that is creating pressures on people's living standards. And we need to build more, particularly in the kind of centres of our cities and boroughs as well. The fourth element is about the everyday economy. So I think we touched on this last time when we had our agenda setting meeting, but these are the jobs that we just started to talk about in that previous conversation: retail, hospitality, leisure, logistics, the arts, culture and tourism. This is the part of the economy where around 2/3 of our residents are employed in. They're not in your they're not professional services, they're not your kind of advanced manufacturing, but they're still vital to a lot of people who are across the region. And unlike previous strategies and other places' strategies, we're trying to define what can we do to support the quality of jobs and the quality of work in the everyday economy as well. So that is the fourth feature. The fifth is around people and skills. So we're trying to say through that, we've got a number of different barriers that people face to even before they get to the position of training, whether it's, poor outcomes in early years, whether it's temporary accommodation, whether it's even racialized barriers in the labour market. We need to address them so that people are then able to go on and to get into upskill. To the previous discussion, we have in the region seen quite a lot of progress towards getting towards removing the number of residents with 0 qualifications. We've seen good progress towards the number of people with level 2 qualifications. One of the biggest gaps we face is the number of residents who don't have a level 3. We've seen the number of residents with level 2 increase by about 4%. at level 4 by over 10%, but there's a gap there where we're not progressing people from level 2 to level 3. So level 2 is important, but we're not moving people through. And that is really important to the economy, because in 10 years, over half of the jobs in the West Midlands area are going to require a level 4 qualification. So if we don't move people towards level 3, in 10 years, when the economy's changed, our residents aren't going to be equipped for that. So we're trying to set a direction of travel there, not to exclude level 2, but to say this is the particular challenge that we're facing in the West Midlands. And last but not least, if you just could skip on one last slide, sorry, Jada.
Oh, sorry.
That's fine, is the nature of our institutions. So if we don't have institutions in the region that can glue all this together and that can tell our story to the world, you know, we don't have a kind of we probably won't deliver this very well. If we're not learning from what's working, if we can't bring our other regional partners alongside us beyond the public sector, we probably won't be able to deliver change of this scale in an economy as large as ours. So these are the kind of main building blocks of what we think we need to do to realise that vision for the economy that I sketched out earlier, which is basically about increasing residents' living standards. We've spoken to local authority partners a lot. We've done some research to underpin this. We've consulted externally. We've got about 150 responses to this. We think we're going in the right direction. We've taken on board some feedback, but what this will result in is the West Midlands Growth Plan that will come out in a couple of weeks now. And as mentioned, be very happy to bring that back, but they are the key elements of it. So you're getting a kind of sneak preview, if you like. And so the kind of what I wanted to end on just before we kind of open up to questions is, as mentioned, the consultation closed on the, if I can remember rightly, the 8th of May or the 11th of May. We're now in the process of responding to people who've submitted. We're now developing some of the things that are coming out of the green paper, not least the growth plan. And then thereafter, there'll be a number of other kind of specific consultations, including on the growth plan, including on the spatial development strategy. That has got somewhere to go at the minute, but there will be a separate consultation on that. But we think this is a really exciting time. It's a really exciting programme. There is a need for something that kind of sits above all of the individual strategies that you will see to say what's the overall direction. And I hope West Midlands Futures is trying to get there in sketching that out. So again, apologies that there's quite a lot of detail in paper, but everything in the kind of A4 document that you've got in your pack is extra detail on top of what we've just run through there. So happy to take any questions, and you should find quite a bit of detail elsewhere in the pack, if that's okay for now, Chair.
Councillors, I'll start with Councillor Walters, then move to Councillor Scott, just to be the other way around.
Thank you, Chair. Now, you mentioned that 50% of the workforce is going to have to upskill to level 3, level 4. In what sectors are these? And we will still need level 2 workers for health and social care, hospitality, and all that load. So we are still going to need people to train for that. But the main one is what services is it that the employees of the future have got to upskill to? Thank you.
It's a very good question. I will try and get the answer for you just on screen, but you are absolutely right on your other points. This is not to say it's all level 4 and above. There will still be a need. If you look at how which sectors are going to increase over that period, the biggest change you're going to see is the expansion of health and social care. If you look at it in terms of blobs, you see that really increasing over time in terms of scale. You see manufacturing shrinking, and then you also see alongside that, you know, digital and professional services increasing quite a bit as well. So, you know, you won't get the kind of 2-tier labour market, but you will get an increase in the bottom end as well. So that will absolutely be needed. It's also worth saying we do have a statutory duty as a combined authority to offer a level 2 qualification to anyone who wants one. That is government policy. Anyone who turns up who needs a level 2 qualification, we've got a duty to respond to that and provide that, which is why a lot of what we spend on is level 2 already. We need to work out how we're going to cater for the change in growth as well alongside that. But I'll come back to your question about sectors in level 3 in a second, if that's okay.
Councillor Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just two things from me. First one is just around how we did the targeting for responses for the consultation. Was it was it public? Was it specific people that we targeted? I just noted that, for example, I couldn't find where councillors had been invited for comments and things like that. Just going through my emails, so it'd be interesting to know how we targeted that, and what those sort of responses look like, and what sort of sectors and what sort of organisations responded, and what sort of people. Secondly, I just like to, I think it's really great to be distinct about what those sort of key sectors are, from the high growth areas with, like the advanced manufacturing, science, innovation and tech. There's some really big employers coming down the road, like the Health Innovation Campus in South Birmingham, for example, and that distinction between the sort of everyday economy. And I just wondered what, there's obviously parts in the green paper around what that vision is for the everyday economy, but I wonder if there's anything more specific around hospitality. In there, we're seeing a lot of hospitality really struggling at the moment, particularly small independents with really high costs on everything through suppliers and everything. And I wonder what the sort of vision is for that, as a sector that seems to be really struggling at the moment, and which could contribute to things going back in the other direction. I just wondered if there's been any thought to that.
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. So, in answer to the first one around the consultation, so we ran a whole series of different programs. I mean, difficult to know where to start. I mean, social media. There's a lot on social media, but also we were trying to find as many events that we had already scheduled. There was the Councillors Marketplace event that we ran a stall on West Midlands Features on in stairs, I think, in this room a couple of months ago. About a month or so ago. There has been several workshops with local authority officers. Alongside that, we were at we held roundtables with the Greater Birmingham Chamber of Commerce, further education, college principals, and so on and so forth. There was a huge list of kind of engagement we undertook over about a 6-week period to get the 150 responses. So we were quite general. I think that in who we targeted, the one audience that we didn't target specifically at this stage was the public. So we didn't go for citizens. We want to kind of speak to citizens as part of the next stage. The main audience of this work is, your public, private sector, your third sector organisations. We want to make sure we've got the right building blocks of what we're talking about first. The next stage, we are looking at how we can then engage the public. Across the last year, engagement with local authorities has been quite consistent, with local with MPs and with politicians. There are a couple of events, but I'd be really happy to take on board any feedback if you've got it, or if the committee has it today. That's completely fine. And in terms of the second question you asked about the hospitality industry, so I think in the green paper we haven't named a particular part of the everyday economy that we've been trying to target yet. The care sector is the biggest part of the everyday economy. It's about 8 to 9% of the overall size. It's the biggest part of the everyday economy. I think what people have told us through the consultation is going to help, firstly, is if we keep, so the Combined Authority funds a lot of business support programs. We fund a lot of skills programs. What the consultation responses have told us is that they are the types of things that employers want to see more of in the everyday economy, so that they can improve their bottom line, they can improve their workforce. That was quite a surprise. I think we originally went into the consultation not really thinking that they would be the two kind of biggest things. What we're also trying to say, though, is we do think there is scope for what we're going to call in the growth plan a good work charter. So this is the idea that how can we define what good work means in the quality of the West Midlands? How can we celebrate employers that are providing good work? How can we champion that in how we do procurement, for example? So how do we define what good work is and then champion it, as well as supporting employers? That's the kind of carrot, if you like, through business support and other programs as well. So again, I think there are some specific challenges facing the hospitality industry, business rates, but what in particular, because they're outside of our control, we aren't seeking to kind of say, well, we can say, government, that is an area where the hospitality industry is saying, this is a big pressure, this is a big source of pressure on us. We're almost trying to say what are the things that we can control and that we can do. So they would have benefits to all parts of the everyday economy. And I think I think it's right to say, well, what are particular sectors within that we might want to do something different. So yeah, we can take that forward as part of the next steps.
Councillor Archer.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Jonathan, for first of all for the report and for the presentation today. Very interesting, and there's a lot of good work going on. Obviously, my first, I've got two questions really. I think they're linked. One, there's what you said about productivity, and it is lower. And I think your report says it could prove a £12 million bonus, if you like, growth, if we can get productivity right. Why is productivity in the West Midlands? I know it's a small question, big answer probably. Why is it so low compared to the average? What work's been done there? My second question, which I think is linked, it's on the everyday economy, which you've just been talking about. And I notice it says in the West Midlands, a recent study shown that everyday economy jobs make up 63% of all jobs in the region. And these jobs are often found in areas of high deprivation and characterised by younger, more diverse, and often female, disabled or foreign-born workers, tend to have poor job quality, etc., including low paid, secure work. My question is on AI and what impact and how much work has been done in terms of what impact is that going to have on jobs? Is that going to help with growth and with providing more jobs, or is it going to actually act against the interest of people, particularly in the areas I mentioned, where we've got in our more deprived areas?
Really good questions. I'll try my best to answer them. So on the first one around why is productivity so low? So you are right to point to that figure. So the most recent data show that the productivity of the West Midlands, so this is GBA per hour worked, so how much kind of stuff are we creating per the number of hours put into it. In the West Midlands, that is £35.70 of GVA created per hour compared to the UK average of just under £42. So £35.70 West Midlands, UK average £41.90. The whole premise of the Green Paper and of the work we've been doing over the last 18 months has been to answer that question. And the answer are in some ways those 6 hexagons that you've got up on screen. We've diagnosed that, we do have innovation strength, but we aren't really using them enough. We've got the highest amount of private investment relating to public investment in R&D than any other region of the UK. So we do think we've got some kind of untapped potential there. We could go much further. If you look at some of the recent narrative around how the West Midlands productivity is kind of going one way and Greater Manchester's is going the other way, from the data that was productivity that was published a few weeks ago. One of the reasons is because they have grown the kind of more productive parts of their economy more aggressively and sooner. So they are now a bigger share of the Greater Manchester economy. So we do think we need to grow what we're doing well even more. Those high growth parts of the economy are only about 15% of employment. So if we could increase the share of those sectors of all jobs, we think that would naturally help to lift up our productivity. But we're not really just saying that's what we need to do. It's about housing and transport that we build. It's about trying to improve the quality of work in the 63% of the economy as well. And ultimately, it's about how the region talks about itself to the world, because we know those things matter. So productivity it's expressed really crudely in that number, £35.70 to £41.90. It makes it sound so small and simple when you just turn the 35 up. But there are so many factors that sit underneath it. And if we can improve that, then we're winning basically. So the growth plan is squarely focused on that. How do we get more from the amount of work that we do, and how do we bring more people into work to enable that? So hopefully the growth plan will be somewhat of an answer towards that. If you could just remind me of the second question, which was
AI. Is it basically
going
to help achieve growth, or is it actually going to act against the interests of people in relatively low paid employment, and is it going to have a negative impact basically, particularly on our deprived areas?
So the simple answer is that we don't fully know yet. AI has changed so much in the last 2 years as to how it's changed the workforce. We can't give a kind of really cast iron answer. There are some people who say we've got it and it's going to destroy our jobs. There are some people who say actually it's going to be more measured. We don't know, and you'd be braver than me if you've got a bet on the future. I'd say 2 things though. One, we are still going to need level 2, level 3 jobs. We're still going to need, as mentioned earlier, your health, your social care workers. The nature of what they do might change. Places like Coventry are really innovating in how they're using AI to help the children and the social care worker. They will still need that, but how they work might change. But also there are some really good opportunities presented by AI that are worth really noticing. There are around 140 companies in the West Midlands that use and employ AI, and that includes around 70,000 people who contribute about 5.5 billion to our economy. So AI is already being embraced and adopted, and there are lots of firms and businesses here who are kind of at the front of that kind of new industry as well. So in short, we don't fully know, but the answer is probably somewhere between the nature of the work that happens in the lowest pay will change, but also in professions like legal, where AI is having a really profound impact. But as well as that, there are some really good opportunities that we've got that are already they're already showing their roots.
Thanks for that answer.
Councillor Kettle.
Thank you, Chairman. A brilliant report, Jonathan, and quite a lot of depth and an awful lot of work being done. There's no doubt about it. I started off quite lightly looking at it, thinking of the intercommunications across the borders, internal, and the time of work, the time of travel to work for each individual that's economically active. And we did some work on Sandwich some months ago, and if we extrapolated Sandwich's figures to the West Midlands, 5 minutes a day would give us 16.6 million hours more leisure, a shorter working day, if we can work on the infrastructure to create just 5 minutes saving a day for a worker. It's immense when you think about it, 16 million hours. But things like the upgrading of the speed of our trains slightly, that could help us to a degree. And also, I think in recent times we're witnessing the limits of a service economy, in that if ever we have to go to defence, if ever we have to go to the creation of armaments and a mass army, or defence needs to be, and it is being spoke about as a higher priority now in the national interest. A service economy doesn't deliver those needs for the nation, and whether we like it or not, we need to fundamentally go back to wealth creation and added value at a fundamental level. Historically, this area has been brilliant at, but as you say in your report, government legislation in the past has been negative to our area and sucked industry out of our area. I remember the regional development grants and people going to Hereford, from Birmingham to Hereford, that sort of business a few years ago. And also, I'm not being critical in any sense, just giving you these points of interest. You make no mention of deflationary effects on our economy. We work year in, year out, contribute on average about 8.5% in pensions. That money goes out of the economy for anything up to 30 years. And 90% of people only get half of it back. So the real value, consistently deflating our economy, things like pensions that we need to look at regionally and think, why are we allowing 8% of our earnings to go out of our economy for anything up to 30 years? It's fundamental things. And I hope you don't mind me being slightly critical, but I think they're interesting points that we must take into consideration where our money goes, how slow it is to come back in a London-centric economy, and the fact that we have significant deflationary aspects that affect our economy. Can I finish on just one more point? The one thing about a balanced economy and growth, when things are going right, the canary in the mine is the nighttime economy. If the nighttime economy works, it's a wonderful indication that everything's working. And I think we need to look at the nighttime economy, looking holistically about wealth creation and growth, communication. The nighttime economy is far more important than, well, I don't see any of it in this report, but things like that. The nighttime economy is the canary in the mine. If that's right and that's growing, everything is working. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Gelt, for those questions. So I think in terms of the first one around transport, and the impact of those very kind of small journey time on the overall regions. Yeah, I mean, I think we'd all agree. I think we're trying to balance a very kind of tricky situation at the minute with the amount of transport funding we've got, with the need to ultimately strengthen that. Ultimately, bus franchising is going to give the region more control over services and routes. The government's direction of travel towards more rail devolution will mean that the region has got more control over rail services.
That's me, I do apologise.
That's fine.
Okay, thanks.
That's fine. So yeah, we are getting more and more control and powers over the region's transport system, particularly on bus and particularly on rail. We see about 70% of all journeys are taken by car, so we can't, as much as we want to say it's public transport, car is still the dominant mode. But we would agree, and I think what we're trying to do through this green paper is to sketch out, because we are a polycentric region, it matters more to us. We are connecting the boroughs to our cities and cities to each other as part of our strategy, because we don't have a kind of single dominant. I mean, we have Birmingham, but we have 3 kind of important cities and 4 boroughs. Connectivity is how we'll get the most out of them collectively. So we are saying that, and the investment announcement from government at the spending review around an extra 2.4 billion for the regions, the next round of the city region transport programme is really good news. So we agree, and we're hopefully moving towards that in the next couple of to make that practical in the next couple of years. In defence, so you are right. In the growth plan, although it's not touched on explicitly in the green paper, one of the pieces of feedback is that we need to talk a bit more about defence, and we do have some strengths in the region in terms of combat air, maritime capabilities, military land vehicles and drones and autonomous systems on the back of our advanced manufacturing base. So we do have something in the West Midlands that we can contribute to that. That will still be a small part of our economy, but that still exists. We're the most manufacturing economy of any other city or region. I still think it's about 11% of either employment or our GDP. So that is still there. Over time, it is going to get smaller, but for the next kind of 20 years, it's still we're going to see it become more specialised over time. So those strengths in defence are definitely part of that as well. On the deflation point, I think I didn't 100% follow the gist, but I think what I understand is all of this spending that we're putting into the region, where does it end up and does it leave the region? And I think at a small level, one of the things in the green paper that we're talking about is growing the social economy. So that is still a relatively small part, but they are businesses that are owned and run by people who live in the West Midlands. The money stays in the West Midlands. That's not, if you shop at a major conglomerate, it goes to wherever. But we are saying that's something we want to grow to help that. But the issues of pensions and where pension investments go, the UK local government pensions, at least 90, if not 95% of their investments go overseas. It's a very small part of UK local government pensions that are invested even in the UK, never mind in the West Midlands. So
4%.
It's tiny, isn't it? So it's if we could. Yeah, that is something we don't tackle head on in the green paper, but is an issue. And obviously the local authorities do their role on their local government pension schemes have got an important role there as well. And on the nighttime economy, I think it would share that there have been a number of big losses to the nighttime economy, and particularly Birmingham recently. I would agree though that it's an expression of how much money is there in the economy, but we held the nighttime economy summit in just over the road in the Hockley Social Club a few months ago now. We have been doing some really innovative things on the nighttime economy, the kind of safety for women and girls in the nighttime economy, transport, the kind of charter that we've been promoting over the last couple of years, and the work we did through having an advisor. So I think if we can create more income, which is a central vision, that will help people in the nighttime economy. But to my previous comment around what can we specifically do about those sectors, there's the business support and there's the skills, and then there's the promotion, the campaigns as well. So hopefully there's a kind of direct and indirect way we're trying to help the nighttime economy through the growth plan.
I think maybe draw this to a close. I've got two things. One is I'd like to support very strongly this concept of leadership training, particularly around the areas of operational management, whether that be production management, project management, running the buses, whatever. My general view of the UK is please don't do anything big because we'll mess it up because we don't know how to manage it. And from my previous experience in industry, just getting people who are competent at these roles is a major challenge. Yeah. And I think a real good piece of work to say, how can the West Midlands get some underpinning skills out there, maybe starting at the age of 18, which I think is the limit of where we can start. We're not allowed to start at school, would be a good idea. So some strategy around that I think would be very helpful. And the second thing is a question really is, Solihull has got 40% higher pay, 40% higher output per worker. I think that those roughly the figures. Have we actually done a comparison of why that is as it is versus other areas, and actually done that internal benchmarking? I guess you have, but I mean, have we actually looked in detail? Why does it work in Solihull but not elsewhere?
I mean, I think I'm happy to come back with a more qualified answer on the Solihull point, but Solihull and to an extent Coventry, they do have one of the kind of jewels of the crown of the region's industry, and that is a significant part of our sport base. It's a significant part of high value jobs. Obviously, JLR employs around 20,000 people across the region, but they do have a particular footprint of workforce in Solihull. So that's not the only reason, but that is a very big reason as to why they are so significant, why productivity is so significant there. I'm happy to come back with a more qualified answer, but that would be my original, that kind of instinctive take. But yeah, I think there are lots of factors as to why some people in Solihull aren't kind of part of that growth. And the East Birmingham, North Solihull initiative with Birmingham is around, it's still got some of the most deprived communities in Europe. The work Mubashir set out around, well, why are some people not able to get into that growth? Well, it's health and it's your early years outcome. And so even where you've got such a really strong asset, you need to support people to be able to even come close to getting there. So it's not all a rosy picture. I know Solihull colleagues work really hard on how they support residents who are, quite far away from work as well.
I was hoping that there might be some other lessons apart from JLR, because I personally, I don't think it is down to JLR.
There might be, I'll come back with a more qualified.
I think we might just learn something, and I think the Coventry thing is also probably because Coventry has got fairly high output per worker as well. So I think to look at that broadly and say, is there anything that's transferable elsewhere might actually be worth looking at, because we haven't got a university in Solihull. We have got a college, but we haven't got a university. So theoretically, we're missing a major thing. So there is a university just up the road called Warwick, which is in Coventry.
I think the point with that is, that advanced manufacturing is one of the sectoral strengths that Solihull and Coventry have. If you look at Birmingham, it's got strengths in some of the more modern parts of financial and professional services. If you look at Wolverhampton, it also has a strength in advanced manufacturing, but different parts of it. So whichever part of the economy a place has got a strength in, the growth plans around, we've defined what those region strengths are and where they are in places. We need to grow them all. So there is a lesson that is transferable, which is we need to grow the productive parts of the economy alongside some of those other lessons and kind of parts of growth that we sketched out in the slide.
Okay, Any further questions, suggestions? Thank you, councillors, and thank you.
There was one further.
Oh, sorry, when are you coming back?
So I'm just going to answer one question that Councillor Wood has raised earlier, which is around which parts of when we talked about level 4 increase, like 50% of jobs being at level 4 by 2035. You asked which sectors are going to be increasing, and the sectors that will be increasing the most, so trade, accommodation and transport, they will see about 50% of jobs are going to move to level 4 by 2035. Construction, so 30% of jobs are going to 30% more jobs are going to be level 4 by 2035, and business and other services is how they're categorised in the data. 23% more will be level 4 by 2035. So that gives you a broad sense of which parts of the economy are going to see more high skilled, smaller, more technical jobs. And how skills are going to. So when you're talking about construction earlier, that is actually absolutely going to be part of the focus of the growth plan to name that as an area where we want to support residents.
Sorry, Chair, this last one is not a question, it's the comment. In everyday economy, we in the West Midlands having a more aging populations now, and the care needs are growing more we expected. So to meet the need or necessity of that particular area, we need more care workers. And care workers at the moment are very, very fragile because nobody wants to get them care. It's a hard job, I'm not denying that. But what we actually was putting any policy in place or immediate support to keep this step ongoing. Is there anything planned or anything new to pipeline coming in the near future?
Children's and adult social care is primarily a local authority responsibility. I think they spend, anywhere close to 70% of their budgets, give or take, places on children and adult social care. They're having to balance a whole number of pressures between, rising minimum wages. They're getting less funding for them all, whilst care workers are trying to be required to give more outcomes. So it's a difficult job. It is part of the mix of the everyday economy, so they would benefit from the skills training that we're able to invest in. But it's something we've heard a lot, like where could we go a bit further, in similar ways you asked about the hospitality sector earlier, because it's the biggest share, it's about 10% of the everyday economy. So I don't have an easy answer. It's mainly their local authority responsibility. It's their biggest area of spending. But hopefully the types of interventions that will come out for low skilled workers, level 2, digital training that we offer as well, and business support will be helpful too.
Thank you.
So I think in summary, and I would like to know when you're going to come back, because you said this is a green paper. I guess the next one's a white paper, is it, if we're using that kind of terminology, i.e. the draft plan. When do you think we will be able to have a look at that?
So we hope, if all goes well, the growth plan will be published on the 21st of July. And so I'm happy to work with the team on when would be the best time to bring that. I mean, you've heard probably about 80% of roughly what it's going to be in there. So if you want to hear the next iteration pretty soon, very happy to. If you want to wait for a bit, that's also fine. It's up to you, Chair and Vice Chair, as to when you want to pencil it in, but whenever you like, pretty much.
Members, do we want it early so we get a chance to modify it, or do we want to see the fuller version towards the end?
Chair, yeah, I think it'd be helpful just to have something that's fairly ongoing, even if it's a fairly quick update from yourself. I think so this is going to be a really critical piece of work for the the authority in the future of the region. So I think it'd be helpful for us to have a fairly ongoing notes. That'd be great. Thank you.
We'll leave it at that, but I think within that we want to see construction and building, hospitality, and how that's going to be developed, and the social care sector, not the numbers of people in it, but what we're going to do to equip the people within our region to be able to meet that need. I think that was what you were talking about. Were there any other sectors that we've missed in that summary?
Thank you, Chair. I'm new to this, so I was listening to see how everything is going. But I thought if I don't make this point now, maybe it will be forgotten. I've got art in my heart. What plan is there for art? Is there any plan? Because I do know that a lot of young people might be missing them. So their interest is in arts, whether it's various arts as a whole. Have you got something in plan to develop art? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Councillor. So yes is the short answer. So in the growth plan, there will be a section within it dedicated to what we call creative industry. So that includes art, but also includes other aspects of performance and audiovisual production, etc. It is one of the areas where the West Midlands is doing some really exciting things at the minute. If you think about what's happening in Digbeth, around Digbeth Lock, obviously we've got Peaky Blinders, which is one of the kind of really kind of proud regional exports. And so we are also getting some more money from central government to grow the cultural and creative industries as well. There was some announced at the spending, just after the spending review. So yes, that will feature in the growth plan. And also, yes, that is one of the areas where, as a region, we are getting more funding to be able to grow something that we're quite good at as well. So it'll be named as one of our kind of areas of strength, but it's also where, you know, the combined authority is doing a lot of exciting investments. And as you say, that is only possible because we've got, what is it? I think around, just double check. We've got over 15,000 creative enterprises in the region who generate around £4 billion gross value added across in 2022. So we've got a huge amount of external ideas and creativity there. Hopefully, by recognising them and investing in them, we can help to go a bit better.
So if you can add that creative industries to that list, just to make sure, because I think those are things that people are interested in. It's that level of detail.
Yeah.
So how many cooks are we going to train? No, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but you know where I'm coming from.
Sorry, Chair, just to add to your ever-growing list, and maybe the impact of AI on jobs.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's a good reminder. Thank you. So if we could now move on to item 11 on the agenda, affordable and social housing, the report.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. Those who don't know me, my name is Rob Running, I'm the Head of Housing Strategy here at the Combined Authority. And I've been working with colleagues on the Scrutiny Committee over the years on affordable housing and social housing progress in the region and how we can hopefully intervene in different ways in the future. The paper sets out a number of areas where we have made significant progress and some examples of that throughout the work of the Combined Authority, but also then take some look to the future as well in terms of what's coming forward. You noted at the start, Chair, about alphabet soup, and I think probably this area of work is a prime example of that. So I will try to reduce the number of acronyms and how many words of jargon I might use, but if there are any questions on any of that, please do say, because this is quite a congested space in terms of names of programmes and the various different abbreviations that we use. So just in general terms, I think it's worth saying that Max did a piece earlier in the agenda around brownfield housing, and in recent past, that has been very much our key area of work in terms of bringing more things forward. And within that, whilst we do not directly fund or contribute to the funding of affordable homes through that type of funding, what we have done is secured more affordable and social homes in the region through the use of that funding in conjunction with Section 106 requirements and in conjunction with affordable housing funds from Homes England. And Section 2.4 of the paper sets out some of that delivery and some of those particular examples. As we move into the integrated settlement, so the current year's funding and then future year's funding, we do have more flexibility for government in terms of the types of things we can support. Within that, we're very keen to continue to secure as much affordable and social housing through that funding as we can, particularly in recognition of both the regional priorities, the Mayor's priorities to deliver more social homes, and of course the 1.5 million homes national target, and within that the target for more affordable housing as well. We're very keen to keep taking that forward, and look to develop as many affordable and social homes as we can through that funding. There are, however, a couple of other different angles that we've also taken. So the paper notes the Homes for the West Midlands partnership that we've entered into. So this is a partnership with a number of the key housing associations in the region. And they have formed a consortium between them to bring forward additional schemes so they continue to deliver their own programmes. But as a collective of the 5 and potentially more in the future, they're working with ourselves and other public sector partners on where they might be able to deliver more. We had approval from Investment Board to go into that agreement and then also to look at a particular scheme as a pilot scheme for that so we can do some lessons learned. That's currently in progress and we're expecting a further aid from the Investment Board in the near future to hopefully approve that scheme to be fenced. So that's really positive and continues to build on the very strong relationship, it has to be said, between the associations and ourselves and other partners in the region, the housing associations and local councils obviously being the key route towards more affordable and social homes in the region. Alongside that, we've been working very closely with Homes England officers as part of the current Affordable Homes programme. So this is the programme that began in 2021 and runs to 2026. The devolution deal in 2023 gave us more influence or say work with Homes England on how those funds are deployed. And since the day of that announcement, we've been working with Homes England on their pipeline, our pipeline, how we look to marry schemes up for joint funding, but also what are the longer term issues that we can look to address. That's been really positive and we've seen some really great schemes come through that have been able to secure some funding through Max's programmes and also through the Homes England programme, thinking particularly of the Dixon site in Wolverhampton most recently, where YMCA, the WHG and ourselves and Homes England are putting funding in to bring that scheme forward as part of the Royal Quarter, but there are lots of other examples in there as well. And we're working with Homes England much wider on how do we kind of join the capacity of the organisation. So Homes England is the national body for housing and regeneration. They have a lot more capacity, expertise, and different types of skill sets within their organisation that we can hopefully bring forward better to work with ourselves in the region. And the work on the Affordable Homes programme is definitely a great example of that. What I would say though, and this has happened since, or part of this has happened since this paper was circulated, so I'll try and give you the most up-to-date position we can share on this, is the work on the next Affordable Homes programme. So this is the programme that begins next year in April 2026. The spending review recently announced the overall funding for that programme is 39 billion for the country as a whole, and it will be a 10-year programme. That was announced, as I say, in the spending review. That followed from significant amount of engagement we've been doing in the region with the sector and with other partners on what could the West Midlands do differently in the future. We submitted our principles as part of the spending review submissions around a longer programme, obviously more funding, hopefully, and more emphasis on social rent as being the most affordable type of rented home that we wanted to support more of in the region, alongside things like supportive and specialist housing, the longer term programme, as I mentioned, and more estate regeneration. So estate regeneration for existing and potentially out of date or beginning to come to the end of their lifetime of useful use schemes. We've made strong representations to government that we'd like to see more of that type of scheme coming through with the Affordable Homes programme in the future. The announcement last week of more detail on the government's national plan for affordable and social housing, so this came out last Wednesday, actually addresses almost all of those points. So we feel really comfortable and confident in what has been announced from government in terms of those inclusions. So there is a 10-year programme. It is 39 billion nationally. There's 11 billion for the DLA, and then the rest is across the nation. They're looking to deliver 300,000 new homes as part of that, affordable homes, and within that, 180,000 socially rented homes. So 60% of the programme will be looked to develop in social rent homes, which again marries with our aspirations for the region. There is an element in there for estate regeneration as well, as long as that delivers additional new homes. So we'll need to work with potential opportunities in the region on what that looks like for our estate regeneration schemes. So as I say, this came out last Wednesday. There's been quite a lot of negotiation and conversation since that point to get to this point, Chair, where I can let you know where we are currently. So within the guidance that was released and in conversation since then with government, the prospectus for this programme is likely to come out in the government's terms autumn. I have asked for a more clear definition of when autumn is, and I haven't got it as yet, but I would expect September onwards. That will be for representations to be made by housing associations and other providers by what they refer to as winter. So I would expect that to be December-ish, in order for the funds to start to be deployed from April onwards. Within that prospectus that they're looking to publish in autumn, there will be a section on the regional priorities for the West Midlands. So what do we want to see developed in our area? And then we will be working with Homes England and the government on how that actually gets translated into how does the combined authority and its local authority partners actually have more oversight and direction setting for how those funds are spent. That is as clear as we have it at the moment. I would like to be able to tell you we know a lot more about it than we do currently. We have been representing the government for over 2 years on this, but obviously there's been a change of government, there's been a change of regime in the region, and there's been lots of political changes in that timescale. However, we do now know at least by the end of this financial year, there will be a new prospectus and there will be a new funding regime, and we know that the region will have some influence and say over how that will be developed and delivered. So frankly, we have a very short timescale now between now and the end of the calendar year to get ourselves in a position for the end of the financial year to do that. But what I would really like to ask as our conversation here today is how do we make sure that the views of yourself, the scrutiny members and the wider local authority environment feed into that? How do we make sure that you're engaged and involved in that process? But also how do we make sure that we've got a collective voice in terms of what it is we're saying back to government that we want to see? So there's a bit of a kind of ask from me, if that's okay with you, Chair, as well as the recommendations in here. But that's kind of where we are in terms of the next programme and the next key steps on that. And subject to the internal processes here, I'll be doing an indicative timeline of where we need to be based on the very sort of vague seasonal dates that we've been given by government in terms of when things need to happen by. But we are expecting more clarity in the next few weeks on that. So I'll be able to update yourselves virtually before the next committee on where we get to. So that's the affordable homes programme. And then the last item in the actual paper itself is around social rent top up. So this is a proposal that the Mayor of West Midlands made to the Deputy Prime Minister last year around using some of our existing funds in a different way, so that we could effectively use some of our funding to top up Homes England funding that was aimed at affordable rented product, which is a rental definition of 80% below, 80% of market value in an area. Social rent is roughly around 50 to 60% of that market rent. So our proposal has been to use some of our funding to effectively top up some of those schemes to make them social rent and make them more affordable. That proposal is with government. We haven't got official confirmation of that yet. We're continuing to negotiate that with government, but we are expecting some news on that soon, and that will give us a more direct influence into specifically social homes in the next few months and in the next few years, but particularly before the next affordable homes programme comes through. That's our biggest kind of to be able to do some of that. So that's where we are with that. And again, as soon as there's any official confirmation of that, I can provide that to the members of this committee as soon as we have it. So that's my summary of the paper, Chair, but I appreciate the big questions and clarifications.
Thank you. Just so I understand what there are two things going on here. There's the government's affordable homes through Homes England, which we hope to influence by saying what our regional priorities are. And would you like this committee to back your regional priorities? Is that I review them and support them? Was that your proposal?
That is, Chair, exactly that. So how we would we have the kind of high level principles that I mentioned, but actually how we would like to see the overview and oversight and making sure that the Homes England programme is accountable to the region, not just to the government. Yeah, what we would like to now propose.
So when would you be able to come back with that?
That's a very good question. And that's the slight nervousness I have about saying at the moment, because we don't know the timescales from government, but certainly as soon as we could possibly get some proposals to yourselves, that's what we'd like to do, and then bring that, whether they would be draft at that stage, to the next committee for discussion at the committee, or whether you'd rather do it as a virtual conversation.
We could do that, or as a task and finish group. There are a number of different ways we could look at that. My general view is we want more affordable housing.
Yeah.
We want it done our way, not the government's way, because we live here.
Oh, yeah.
And therefore we would welcome that opportunity. But we could do, if we did that as a task and finish group, that means we can do it by teams, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that offer is there, because the trouble is we've got fixed dates and they might not fix in with your fixed dates.
And I get exactly right, Chair, and that's a little bit of my kind of, like I say, uncertainty about how best to do it. So if that task and finish group is the way forward, I would really welcome that.
And anybody can be on the task and finish group. Because I think this is of regional importance, and I think it is important that our views are taken. The views of the grassroots are taken into consideration, and hopefully we can just support it, and then that will help you get what you want, we want. So we'll agree to do that. Now, questions on the rest of it? House of Waters.
Thank you, Chair. Now, there's one thing the government's brought in that I find very confusing, is we had green belts and we had green belt and we had brownfield. Now we've got grey belts, and trying to siphon through what actually grey belt is. I mean, I sit on planning, so it's very, very difficult to actually work this out. And for such as yourselves and us, they really need to make that a lot more clearer, so as we've got something to be working on of what the definition is, because it can be very confusing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and I agree in being equally confused, I think, on the grey belt sort of definition. So for members' clarity, this is in the current government proposals for the changes to the national planning policy framework. Grey belt is land that is within current green belt allocations, but has previously been developed. So the example that's quite often used is disused petrol stations, etc. So could they be built on? So admittedly, they are within the green belt area, but they are not green land. They are effectively green belt land. Now, how that will all work through the new planning framework is frankly not my expertise whatsoever. I'm not a planner. I wouldn't want to get too detailed on that, but I can request that one of our officers in the planning side can do an update and a brief on where that is going, because, as you say, it is an additional element to this which adds kind of extra complexity.
Yeah.
Worth us bringing a bit more detail.
The government have issued guidelines on what grey belt is, and a whole series of criteria, and the whole of Solihull's green belt is grey belt. But it depends on what you're going to use it for. I mean, it is the most bizarre.
It is.
But there are criteria, but
yeah,
they're not really that helpful.
Yeah.
But has your head of planning given those to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, we actually asked for, because apparently, sorry, tell me, Michael. Apparently, the actual document is like this. Well, our head of planning, and you guys can ask for the same thing. Our head of planning has actually sent us out as more simplified document to look at, rather than having to go through miles and miles and miles of information. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And also, just to note, I'm happy to support Castle and finish on this. I totally agree. It's worth making sure that our views are heard. Secondly, I think the social rent top-up's a really good idea, something that we should be championing, especially as we've already heard about things like wages and employment things in the regions. So, my question is in 9.3 on the section on homelessness, and you mentioned about supported housing, and I wonder whether there's the ambition for that is also tied into any of our employment goals as well. I think particularly around, we've got a lot of supported exempt accommodation in Birmingham, where we actually find people living in it as very, very little support that they're meant to have around mental health, but also things like employment and things like that as well. Actually, we probably really benefit from high quality support, things like IPS that we've already heard about today. And so I wonder whether, as part of that ambition for how we deal with some of that supported accommodation, we're looking to tie it into sort of our wider sort of regional objectives around local jobs and employment. And also whether there's anything that's going to be in this around the outcomes from Housing First as well. So that's sort of been one of the sort of major pilots that we've had across the region, and CA supported for a number of years. So I wonder if there's any sort of learning from that, and if we want to sort of include that as sort of part of our sort of wider ambition for tackling homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you. Great points. And I think on the homelessness side of things, so I work very closely with a colleague called Noel Sunder, who's our homelessness task force lead. And we've done quite a bit of work on what the programme hopefully in the future will do, particularly for or reducing the need for temporary accommodation, and also then hopefully helping those that cohort into more sort of stable accommodation. One of the key bits that we get kind of into the weeds a little bit with government on this is exactly what you say about the revenue support. So this is a capital programme. So we can provide the homes, but how do we provide the revenue support for the people living in those homes, and how does that tie up? To be fair to the powers that be, shall we call them, at Homes England, that is recognised as a key issue and an issue they're taking up with government as well. You know, we can provide the home, well, with this funding, we can potentially provide the home, but that doesn't completely deal with the whole issue. So how does that work with DWP funding and other parts of the system to bring that more collectively? And the Homelessness Task Force has championed that quite a lot here as well through the West Midlands. What we'll be doing as part of this submission to government, we'll be working with themselves on the Task and Finish group, is bringing out exactly those points. So broaden it outside of the capital programme to the additional elements we'll need, one of which would be around that revenue support. And again, the more collective work on that, the better really. And it fits in with a lot of the work that St Basil's and others have done around the live and work model. So giving people a home that reflects their income whilst they get themselves into permanent or permanent employment and, you know, steady the ship, so to speak. We've got it's not in black and white at the moment, but we've got a perspective from government that they're really keen to support that through the programme, but again, it relies on much more. So again, how do we build that into this wider piece? Comes again a little bit back to the point Jonathan was making around the green paper and also the integrated settlement, as well as how do we actually make these things join up properly rather than just operating individually.
Right, I think.
You have our support.
Excellent, thank you.
And we'd like to see the detail of our wishes for the Homes England approach for our region.
Excellent.
To be able to support you. Thank you.
Thank you.
On the work programme, unless anybody has any comments, I suggest we just note it. It is changeable during the course of the year. We've actually changed it during the course of this meeting. And our next meeting is on the 1st of September. I really appreciate the fact that people have turned up. Quorum has been a challenge on this committee for a number of years, and I really appreciate the fact that you came and substituted for your colleague. Philip is missed. He's always been a good contributor, but we really appreciate that you took the trouble to attend. Thank you.
Now, when we had a chairs and vice chairs meeting, what we actually discussed was, because my sub that I've got this year, really conscientious, he wants to know all about it. So if he has to sub for me, such as yourself, he's going to have a little insight in it. And what we've discussed is having a meeting or two where subs can actually also attend, so as they can get a gist of what's going on instead of coming in blind and not having a clue what it's about. So we're going to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, that is that's a good point. Anybody who wants to bring their sub along, that's fine. Technically, they can't vote, but for that integration to get a broader understanding of the work that is done here is going to be quite helpful. So you're welcome to do that. Missed anything out? I don't think so.
No, just a couple of quick messages from myself. If you haven't completed your bank forms yet, please do and forward that to myself. And also you should have received a register of interest or declaration of interest form to complete. If you could complete that and return, that'd be great.
There is one other thing. I always ask for a paper copy because I cannot read on screen this level of detail. If you want that, you need to let Lindsay know. Sometimes there is a lot here. Thank you for coming.
Anyone doing it, mate?